Um, so I'm going to talk about something that is really that I'm really passionate about, and it's about how VR and AR, which makes it XR, is going to bridge, in my belief, going to bridge the gap between the artist and the developer. And a little bit about me, my name is Sarah. I work at a VR video startup in town called Pixvana. I'm a developer there, and I've been working in VR for about a year and a half. And one thing that really drew me to this industry is the fact that it's so creative, and it's not just sitting at a computer writing code. It's thinking about how people are going to interact and what things are going to look like. And I mean, when I was starting out as an engineer, one of the reasons I was drawn to software and drawn to like VR specifically is because I was like, I can write something on a computer and I feel like I'm actually making something artistic and making something beautiful. That might be like some computer programmer cliche, like my code is art, but I really think that with VR, code can be art and art can be a more technical area. So I think it's pretty obvious for those of us here today that the area of AR and VR is not just developing, not just developers. So I think a lot of people, and women specifically, are a little bit afraid to like dive into the tech industry or the VR industry because they're like, oh, well, I'm not a developer. So, I don't know how to code. What can I do? But really, like in this industry, there's so many other areas besides developers that we need help with. So yeah, you could be this guy, but you could also be a VR filmmaker, providing VR content that people are going to interact with. Like in order for the industry to really succeed, we need meaningful content that people are going to see and use every day. And yeah, having the software to create that is important, but what the end audience and the users are going to see is really like the art that went into your project. So, here like at this specific Create-athon, I think it was like 30% developers and the rest are artists or designers or creators, creative professionals. So that's something that I really love about this industry, is that it's like bringing together so many different people. And it's also like letting people kind of expand upon their skills a little bit. So I work at a VR software company. I'm a developer, but I also like have access to all these really cool 360 cameras. So I'm like, I might as well be a filmmaker too. So I've been starting to make like 360 films in my spare time, and I think that's really exciting, is when you get all of these industries like mushing together. It encourages people to try new things that they wouldn't have tried before. And I also really wanted to talk about VR as a medium. So this is something like that I've heard many times. I didn't come up with this on my own, but if you take tilt brush as an example, who here has tried tilt brush? Probably most of us. So when you get into tilt brush, even if you're not an artist at all of a sudden you're like, I'm an artist, and you are like moving your whole body around. Like I remember the first time I tried tilt brush, I literally turned into a 7-year-old. I was like, ooh, I can make a house, and doing all these crazy things. And in that sense, it's like it's such a powerful medium. And like tilt brush is really just the beginning. Like I've seen I forget the names, but I've seen a bunch of other tools. Like there's like a sculptor VR where you can like sculpt your own worlds, and I think there's like a graffiti one, and like these are like literally just the beginning. Like if even looking at tilt brush, all of their different controls and stuff that they have. Like there's, you can shoot sparkles out of your paintbrush. You can have fire coming out. But yeah, I think that's totally just the beginning of what we're going to be able to do in VR. I think eventually there's going to be like a similar project to like Adobe Illustrator, but in VR, where you're like basically designing VR inside of VR. And same with like filmmaking too. I think eventually we're gonna, like right now, what I'm working on is building a web platform for VR filmmaking. I think eventually I'm going to be building that inside of VR. So all of these editing and creation tools are going to go into VR, and it's going to allow the end user, the artists, the creators, to be interacting inside of that as a medium. And same with AR too. Like, what AR really does is just eliminates the need for screens. So you're going to be using this as a tool to create your art. And one thing that I've been talking to multiple people about today is how, as an artist, if you're familiar with your engine and familiar with your tool, you're going to be able to create more with that. So people who are artists who are looking to come into VR should really be learning about the tools that they're using and learning how they work, and partnering up with engineers. And also engineers should be listening to artists, like, how are you going to use this tool? How is this going to work for you? Because at the end of the day, all this technology that we're creating is for people to enjoy and explore. So we really want to make sure that we're enabling people to do so. And this is just my last point here. Why can't we be both? Like, why does there have to be a divide between whether you're a coder or an artist? I think that there's always been like a very different idea of what these two are. And I was having a conversation with my friend who's a VR artist the other day, and he's built really incredible art experiences in the Vive. And his background is in art and physics or something, so he kind of just learned development for building these experiences. And I was like, well, what do you think engineers can learn from artists? And his response was, how to not be a dick, which I thought was really funny. But I mean, that is a little, and what he meant by that is like, engineers think so logically most of the time, whereas artists are more emotional. And I think that's where like there's such a line between the two. But I think that a medium like VR and AR will allow these two to kind of converge, and maybe programmers will become less of a dick and more, understanding of how what they're creating is impacting others. And I've always felt like, personally, I identify more with my artistic side than my programming side, and I think that's kind of why I've always like struggled between the two until I found VR. And as soon as I found VR, I was like, this is it. This is like perfect for those of us that feel like we don't have to choose. Like, I don't want to choose between being a dorky engineer and being like, the creative artist that I've wanted to be. No offense to engineers, I'm one too. We're all dorky, but I didn't want to choose between those two. So I think VR is like the perfect way to kind of combine those two. And there's a lot of really interesting ways that artists are starting to use VR. For prototyping is a huge one right now. So for example, I know someone who's a sculptor, and he goes into Tilt Brush and he prototypes all of his designs before he actually builds them. So I already mentioned how much freedom you have in Tilt Brush, and you can just move around. There's no materials, all of the need for, like thinking about how am I going to do something. You're not really thinking about the logistics of it. You're just creating. You're just in there, and you're like, this is what I want to build. I'm going to build it. You're not like, okay, I need to be in this huge room to build what I want to build. I need $10,000 worth of glass or whatever it is that you're working on. It's just enabling you to just, as an artist, just go in and create what you want to make. So yeah, as one, it's a tool, and then as another, it's a really interesting way to experience and interact with art. And I think a lot of us here will probably agree that the digital world and the real world, whatever that is, don't necessarily have to be two different things. Like, we can bring them together, and that can be a really good thing. So yeah, that's basically my talk. One other thing, I'm going to be at a cool event in San Francisco next week. It's called Art in Virtual Reality, and it's like a showcase of a bunch of artists from, I think, all over the country, and some of them are VR artists. There's a lot of technical artists and painters, and I'm actually going to be filming it in 360, and that will be shared on Facebook by Upload VR and probably my personal Facebook as well. So if you want to add me on Facebook, my name is Sarah Stumbo, or you can follow me on Twitter and I'll post it there. So if you're interested to see like how people are kind of starting to think about art in VR, that video will probably explain it a little bit more. All right, any questions? Okay. Yeah?
So what I'm amazed about is how this to me is like a fracture point in this whole VR stuff. Like, it's amazing how deep it's getting. Like, I hear a lot of people even still working on VR engines and stuff. They're still doubting the impact of it. But I've just seen your presentation, and it's pretty clear it's probably changed your life.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. I think, right, yeah, like, another whole thing that people have kind of started to think about is how VR is going to change the internet. And that right there kind of blows my mind. Like right now, most of the content that we look at on the internet is in 2D. And like, I think like 5-10 years from now, like we're not going to look at any two-dimensional web content anymore. Like if your site is in 2D, that's like, you're a dinosaur at that point. So I think there's that. And then, yeah, the possibilities for creation. Like I think what VR and AR are really going to do is just completely like combine our digital world with our real world, and they're not going to become so different anymore. They're going to become like one big mesh of awesomeness. Yeah.
So talking from kind of a practical standpoint, is there something that you've done at your place of work or you've seen happen that is really effective when it comes to bridging that gap between the people that are more on the artistic side and the people that are on the development side? Or their tools, or their just kind of best practice things, or like how has that worked with your experiences?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is just getting people in the same room together at this point. Like events, like coming to events like these, and like connecting with people. So I went to the Seattle VR hackathon I think that was in April. And there I met 2 artists who were like really interested in working with VR. And so we've kind of collaborated, and since then we've been working on a project that kind of like bridges together more artistic ideas. So I think just getting to understand like the different points, and like if you're a technical person, yeah, find a passionate artist and learn from them. If you want to learn, there's so much room for collaboration and bringing people together. I think VR doesn't have to be such a like solo experience thing, but more of a collaboration. And then also just like, I don't know, and anytime I want to learn something new, I just Google that, like, so yeah, I think there's tons of ways to expand and learn. Yeah.
Any VR artists you suggest following? Any particular work you found interesting?
Yes. Let me pull up the website. Oh, you guys know Kabibo? This is the guy I was talking to the other day that I was saying. So he has a bunch of experiences in the Vive, but this is like, he does a lot of web stuff too, but he also has some really cool Vive experiences. This is definitely like one of the best that I've seen. It's like you're interacting with this art inside of VR. There's another one called Shapespace VR, and I think those are the only 2 like real ones that I'm aware of right now. I think as the technology emerges, as more people get into this industry, the art is going to kind of emerge, and as we create more tools like similar to Tilt Brush, more artists are going to be like, oh, what's this VR stuff? I want to be creating in this. And whether or not they're creating it in a tool like Tilt Brush, or they're going in and they're just creating it directly from Blender or another like modeling tool, there's a ton of room for artists to get into it. All right, thank you very much.